Historic preservation gives us our sense of place and helps us to identify and to feel like when we've come home, we recognize home.
It's amazing what can happen to a sense of our community, our sense of culture, our sense of who we are when our structures go away, when our landmarks go away. We seem to have a need to identify with those things as a culture. When we don't have them, when they go away, we have to rethink who we are as a community, as a culture.
Giving those historic structures a second life and an opportunity to continue to serve the community and in whatever capacity, so that you can see where you've been and what type of a community you are. Because every community is different.
For future generations to understand the important aspects of any community or neighborhood, those structures need to be in place. They need to remain intact.
Preservation Oklahoma was founded in 1992 as an independent, statewide advocate for preserving Oklahoma's historic buildings and sites and the state's unique identity. POK partners with the State Historic Preservation Office and other organizations to ensure that historic preservation is one of the first tools communities reach for in revitalization and economic development efforts. POK carries out its mission through several initiatives that educate, advocate, and rehabilitate the buildings and sites that help define Oklahoma's unique sense of history and place.
In the 1960s, Congress passed the Historic Preservation Act that created a formal process that would limit the actions of the federal government and its impact on historic buildings. Well, coming out of that very narrow government program came a general public attitude sympathetic to historic preservation.
A lot of us began to recognize that while Oklahoma City and Tulsa had some fairly mature preservation efforts, most small towns didn't. We realized that what we needed was an umbrella organization to support all of the individual efforts of counties and small towns and cities, and a spokesperson, a spokes group for it.
In historic preservation, we have an overused phrase of public-private partnerships in a lot of the things that we do, and it's overused for a reason. Like a lot of other things in modern society, there's a role for both government and the private sector. And Preservation Oklahoma filled an important void there in the early 90s when they were formed. There are certain things that are in their prerogative that are not in the mission of a public agency such as ours.
One of Preservation Oklahoma's most effective tools for education about the importance of preserving the state's history is the Endangered Places List, which is patterned on a program developed by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. Since 1993, POK has used its annual Most Endangered Historic Places List to raise awareness about threats facing some of Oklahoma's most significant historic resources. Over the past 20 years, the Endangered Places List has attracted positive attention to dozens of buildings and sites, many of which have been set on a path to rehabilitation as a result. Two successful examples are the Saline Courthouse in Rose and the Nickel-McClure Mansion in Alva. The Saline Courthouse project highlights a growing awareness about the importance of tribal preservation efforts. The Cherokee Nation's restoration of the site has brought not only tribal citizens together in common cause, but has also become a successful tool to educate all visitors about the complex and fascinating history and culture of the Cherokees in Oklahoma.
This is one of the last remaining district courthouses that the Cherokee Nation originally had set up once arriving here in Indian Territory. So having this building here and preserving this building really allows the public to experience a piece of Cherokee Nation history through a living asset, something that's here, something that's tangible. And they can come here and they can understand, a little bit about Cherokee Nation history through this structure.
Well, in 2003, when I came out, I noticed it was just beautiful grounds, but the building and the spring house were really in decay. And so I went home and I did some research and found out that it was listed on Preservation Oklahoma's most endangered list. That actually ended up being an important tool in helping us get the attention from our community and from tribal leaders. Preservation actually came to our very first community meeting, And then after that, we formed our nonprofit. We worked with the Cherokee Nation to develop a master plan for the site and had it designated as the first national park for the Cherokee Nation, the Saline National Park. For our organization, Preservation Oklahoma was a voice, a state voice. It was a good tool to put on there that we had been on Preservation Oklahoma's endangered list. It let others know nationwide that it was an important site and that it was endangered and needed to be saved.
The Saline Courthouse is important to keep around, not only because of its history to the Cherokee Nation, but it creates a sense of place here. And without a sense of place, we don't have a sense of our history.
Long vacant and neglected, the Nickel-McClure mansion in Alva was so deteriorated that preservationists feared for the survival of the 1904 structure. POK's 2009 Endangered Places designation attracted a local buyer who has begun a painstaking rehabilitation of the town landmark.
The Nickel-McClure mansion was built in 1904 by George Nickel, who was a prominent citizen in Alva at the time. He was a banker. He and his family were very much involved in the community and its civic affairs. They built the home in 1904. It's 13,000 square feet, very eclectic and original architectural style, and it's a landmark. So Preservation Oklahoma felt that it was important to recognize that structure and place it on the Endangered Places list back in 2009. And shortly thereafter, a local resident purchased the home, and he's been restoring it.
One of POK's primary tasks is the operation and ongoing stewardship of the Overholser Mansion. Built in 1903 by Oklahoma City father Henry Overholser, the mansion belongs to the Oklahoma Historical Society. In 2003, Preservation Oklahoma entered into an agreement with the society to manage the mansion and oversee its ongoing restoration. The mansion is open daily for public tours and is also a popular site for special events. State and federal tax law currently provides attractive incentives for the rehabilitation of historic buildings. These benefits encourage revitalization by leveling the economic playing field for communities seeking to preserve historic buildings and districts. POK added a strong voice to statewide efforts, leading to Oklahoma's adoption of the state tax credit in 2006 and again in 2010 when the tax credit was targeted for dissolution.
It's not that it is that much more expensive to do a rehab, but the reality is that you could build a concrete box probably cheaper than you could take an existing turn-of-the-century brick building and bring it back.
The craftsmanship that went into constructing these buildings, the ornamentation, none of these features are replicated in today's construction. They're very much of their time, and when you put it into context with those who live there and important historic events, it really gives you a true window into the past.
POK joined preservationists around the state, lobbying for the continuation of this highly effective economic development tool. In 2012, Oklahoma lawmakers voted to reinstate the rehabilitation tax credit.
The preservation frontiers in Oklahoma, I think, are really exciting and challenging. Oklahoma has a large universe of buildings from the recent past, and all of these things are now, they're aging. And these are the historic buildings that the next generation of preservationists will be dealing with. And it's sometimes difficult to get people to appreciate certain kinds of properties for their historical and architectural value. I think another frontier that all of us involved in preservation today need to be thinking about very seriously is the next generation of preservation leaders coming behind us. We're going to need to work to reach out and to encourage them to get involved, to train in the professions that are so important in historic preservation, and to get them to understand the importance of this mission that we all share.
If you don't know from where you came, you probably are not going to know where you're going. And the history of our country is so, it's beautiful, it's painful, it's a wonderful, exciting experiment, and preservation is about us and the continuation of us.
We have to start understanding that our past is important, will lead us down the road about our future. And those are things that we still have. Oklahoma is not that old that we've lost all that many resources.
POK is critical to the future of Oklahoma's communities. Government can't do it alone. We as individuals cannot do it alone. It takes a group action, and POK is the voice of that group action.
We truly have a great opportunity to preserve who we are as Oklahoma communities, as Oklahomans, but we need everyone to be involved.
Through a combination of education, advocacy, and collaboration with partners such as the Oklahoma Historical Society, the Oklahoma State Historic Preservation Office, and the Oklahoma Main Street Center, Preservation Oklahoma is continuing to grow in statewide membership and relevance.
Preservation Oklahoma has done a marvelous job, and it's followed its model extremely well, but we've never forgotten for what we were brought into being.
21st century frontiers throughout the state include a deepening relationship with tribal preservation efforts and a growing awareness about the importance of preserving structures and neighborhoods from the recent past. Perhaps the biggest challenge is continuing to engage the hearts and minds of Oklahomans. As preservation leaders, supporters, and citizens who believe that the knowledge of our past is the most significant determinant of who we will become in the future. Oklahoma's history is unique in the nation. It can't be duplicated anywhere else. It is sometimes grand and sometimes painful, but the story of Oklahoma's communities and its historic buildings is the story of us. It's a story worth preserving for future generations.